Do you ever wonder why some men never chase, yet women chase them? Why some men stand still, calm, unbothered, and suddenly women fight for their attention? And yet most men, maybe even you, end up running, proving, explaining, giving more, and still feel ignored, undervalued, even invisible. Here's the truth. Attraction doesn't come from chasing, it comes from pulling, from being rare, from being the man who doesn't bend, who doesn't beg, who doesn't fold. But let me ask you, why do so many men struggle with this? Why do they feel like if they don't give more, they'll lose her? Why do they believe silence equals rejection, when in reality, silence often creates desire? Think about it. Why do women become obsessed with the man who doesn't constantly text? Why do they think endlessly about the one who isn't always available? Why do they invest more when they sense he's not desperate to keep them? Why do men keep failing to see that giving too much destroys value, while giving space multiplies it? This is the problem. Most men don't understand the power of absence, detachment, and scarcity. They think being present every second makes them valuable. But what if the opposite is true? What if the less you give, the more she craves? What if her attraction grows not when you chase her, but when you stand still and let her chase you? By the end of this video, you will know exactly how to flip this dynamic. You will learn how to become the man who doesn't try to be rare, he is rare. The man who doesn't chase love, but makes love chase him. The man who finally understands the Stoic truth of attraction. When you stop begging for her attention, she'll fight for yours. Have you ever noticed that the men who seem to work the hardest to impress women often get ignored the most? And yet the men who barely try, who don't chase, who aren't desperate for attention, somehow they become the ones women can't stop thinking about. Doesn't that feel unfair? Why does this happen? Why does giving too much attention make her lose interest, while pulling back makes her chase? Why is it that when you're always available, always texting, always showing her that she's the center of your world, she suddenly acts bored, cold, or distant? And let me ask you this, how many times have you thought, if I just prove myself, if I just give her more of me, if I just show her how much I care, she'll finally respect me? Only to realize that the more you give, the less she values it? Why do men who overinvest end up feeling invisible, while men who hold their ground command respect without saying a word? Here's the truth. Attention is like currency. The more you throw it around without control, the less it's worth. Just like money, if everyone had millions of dollars overnight, money itself would mean nothing. The same happens with your attention. If she can have it whenever she wants without earning it, it stops feeling rare. It stops holding power. Women are wired to value what's scarce, what feels earned, what feels just a little out of reach. If you're the man who's always there, always waiting, always available, she doesn't feel the need to work for you. But if you're the man who lives with purpose, who doesn't hand over his attention like candy, she senses scarcity. So the problem isn't that you care. The problem isn't that you want her. The problem is how you give yourself away. Attention without boundaries destroys desire. Attention with control builds attraction. The real secret is learning how to position yourself so that your presence feels like a reward, not something she takes for granted. And here's the beautiful part. When you master this, you'll notice women start leaning in. They'll text first, they'll fight for your time. They'll value every word you say, because they know you're not the man who gives it away to everyone. So, if attention is currency, how do you spend it wisely, in a way that multiplies your value instead of draining it? Should we go deeper into that? The invisible game of energy. What if I told you that women don't just respond to what you say or what you do, but to something you're not even aware you're giving off? Something invisible, something powerful, something that can either make her lean in with curiosity or pull away with boredom. Have you ever noticed how two men can say the exact same words to a woman, but one gets dismissed while the other gets respect? Why is it that you might text her something kind and thoughtful, but instead of drawing her closer, it makes her colder? Why is it that sometimes your presence feels heavy to her, while another man's presence feels magnetic, even if he says less? The problem is not always your words, it's not always your looks, it's the energy you project without realizing it. So the real question is, what is the energy you're radiating? And how do you control it instead of letting it control you? Every interaction with a woman is an exchange of energy. She doesn't just hear your words, she feels them. She doesn't just see your actions, she feels the intent behind them. And this is where most men fail. If you approach her from neediness, she feels it instantly. She feels the subtle tension in your body, the way your voice slightly bends for approval, the way your eyes seek validation instead of standing grounded. That energy tells her, this man needs me to feel valuable, and instantly she loses attraction. If you approach her from scarcity, she senses it. She knows you've put her on a pedestal because you don't see many options for yourself. That energy tells her, this man has no abundance, and attraction dies. But if you approach her from abundance and calm confidence, she also feels it. She notices how your words aren't rushed, how your presence isn't desperate, how your attention isn't needy. That energy tells her, this man is already full within himself, and that's when attraction ignites. Here's the hidden truth. Women are more sensitive to energy than men realize. She can feel when your attention is heavy, clingy, or seeking. She can feel when you're holding back your truth out of fear. She can feel when you want something from her instead of simply enjoying the moment. This is why high-value men don't just work on their words or strategies, they work on their state of being. They know that women aren't only attracted to what you show, they're drawn to what you radiate. Think about it. When you enter a room, do people feel a calm strength around you, or do they feel an anxious presence that's trying to prove itself? That one difference separates men who are overlooked from men who are unforgettable. So how do you control this energy? Round 1. Detach from the outcome. Stop walking into interactions with an agenda. If you want her to like you, she will feel the neediness. Instead, walk in to share your vibe, your presence, your truth, not to take something from her. 2. Master emotional control. Energy leaks when you react to every small thing she does. If she takes long to reply, do you panic? If she seems distant, do you chase harder? Every overreaction gives off desperation. Stoicism teaches you to remain calm, to choose your response, and to let your energy remain grounded. 3. Live from purpose, not approval. When your energy is anchored in a larger purpose, your mission, your goals, your vision, you stop projecting neediness onto women. You no longer need her to complete you. Instead, she feels your wholeness, and paradoxically, that's what makes her want to be around you more. So ask yourself right now, what energy are you radiating? Because whether you realize it or not, she feels it every second. But here's the deeper problem. Even if you project the right energy, if you don't understand how to control the power of absence, you'll still lose her attention. And absence is far more powerful than presence when used correctly. The silent saboteur of attraction. Have you ever noticed how sometimes silence speaks louder than words? Think about it. There are moments when the way a man carries himself, the way he reacts or doesn't react, completely changes the way others see him. Now let me ask you, could it be that what ruins many men's chances with women is not what they say, not even what they do, but how they handle silence, tension, and pressure? Let's build a picture here. What happens when a man cannot sit still in silence, when he feels the need to fill every pause with nervous chatter? What happens when he laughs too quickly, agrees too eagerly, or rushes to prove himself because he fears the awkward quiet? What happens when he shows that he cannot carry the weight of calmness, that he needs constant reassurance, that he cannot handle the invisible pressure in the air? Women notice this instantly. And here's the problem. Attraction doesn't grow in noise, it grows in mystery. tension, and restraint. If you can't hold silence, you reveal insecurity. If you can't hold back, you expose desperation. Now let me stretch this further. What if the reason many men fail isn't because they lack good looks or money, but because they lack the discipline of stillness? What if the strongest display of value is not to rush, not to chase, not to fill, but to wait and let the world come to you? And what if the very thing you fear, those quiet pauses, that uncomfortable silence, that tension when she looks at you, is actually the moment that builds the deepest attraction? This is the silent saboteur, the inability to be calm under pressure, the inability to carry yourself like a rock in a storm. Think about it. How do kings command respect? Do they speak endlessly? Do they rush to fill the silence? No. They let their presence do the talking. They let others lean into their stillness. They allow the weight of silence to increase their gravity. So here's the uncomfortable truth. If you can't hold back your need for approval, you'll never be respected. If you can't let silence breathe, you'll never create real mystery. If you can't sit in the tension, you'll never unlock the part of a woman's mind that wonders, who is this man really? And that's the power, stillness, silence, and control. The man who doesn't rush, doesn't explain himself, doesn't break under silence, he becomes the rare one. Now ask yourself, could it be that your biggest enemy in attraction is not your words, not your looks, not your effort, but your inability to master silence and tension? What if I told you that the very way you communicate, your tone, your silence, your timing, can make her see you as a man she cannot ignore? What if the strength of your attraction power doesn't come from what you say, but from what you don't say, from how you carry yourself in the quiet moments? Sounds strange, right? Yet this is one of the most overlooked weapons men fail to use in their lives. Why do some men talk endlessly, trying to explain themselves, yet only end up sounding weak and desperate? Why do women lose interest when a man is always eager to respond instantly, as if his entire world revolves around her messages or calls? Why do men sabotage themselves by over-explaining, over-sharing, or over-pursuing, thinking that words alone can win her respect? Why do men forget that silence itself is a form of communication, and one that can be far louder than empty chatter? Why does giving away every detail about yourself too quickly strip away all mystery, leaving nothing for her to discover? Why do men think they must fill every silence, not realizing that their discomfort exposes their insecurity? Silence, timing, and controlled communication are not just small details. They are core foundations of masculine presence. A man who knows when to speak and when to stay quiet demonstrates power without even trying. He creates a contrast in her mind. He becomes unpredictable, and unpredictability is one of the greatest triggers of female curiosity. Think about it. If every time she texts, you instantly reply with long paragraphs, what message are you sending? You're telling her she has easy access to you. You're telling her she doesn't need to work for your attention. But when your responses are measured, when your words are chosen with intent, when your silences stretch long enough for her to wonder what you're doing, you shift the dynamic. You no longer chase. She leans in. She starts to think about you more in your absence than she did in your presence. Women are emotional creatures. They are constantly reading into what is said, and more importantly, what is not said. If you speak too much, you remove her ability to interpret, to imagine, to wonder. But when you communicate with precision, when you allow silence to fill the air with tension, you let her imagination do the heavy lifting for you. This is why confident men don't rush to prove themselves through words. They don't reveal their entire story in the first few days. They don't jump to answer instantly. They don't beg for validation through constant talking. Instead, they use pauses, controlled timing, and selective sharing to build value. A woman should feel like peeling back your layers is a journey, not a one-time download. Every interaction should leave her with unanswered questions. Every silence should plant curiosity. Every measured word should carry weight. This is not about playing games. This is about self-control. It's about knowing that you are not required to explain, prove, or validate yourself to anyone. You speak because you choose to, not because you need to fill the silence. You respond because you want to, not because you fear losing her if you don't. And here's the deeper truth. Silence reveals the truth of your inner world. If you are secure, calm, and grounded, silence feels natural. You can sit in it without panic, but if you are insecure, silence becomes unbearable. You rush to fill it with noise, and in doing so, you give away your power. So here's the question. Would you rather be the man whose words vanish into the air like background noise, or the man whose silence lingers in her mind long after the conversation ends? Have you ever noticed how the loudest person in the room often gets ignored, while the quiet one sitting back, calm and composed, holds everyone's attention without even trying? Doesn't it seem strange that the less you say, the more people lean in to listen? And why is it that silence, when used correctly, makes you appear 10 times more powerful than constant talking? Think about it. How many times have you ruined your own value by over-explaining yourself? How many times have you said too much in an attempt to impress, only to realize later that your words actually weakened you? How many moments of attraction slipped through your hands because you didn't know the art of being still, of holding silence, of letting the other person feel your presence without forcing it? This is the problem most men never see. They think attraction is built by doing more, saying more, showing more. But isn't it true that the strongest men you've ever admired carried a presence that spoke louder than their words? They didn't chase validation with endless talking. They created tension with their pauses. They made others crave their approval by speaking less, not more. Ask yourself, why do you feel uncomfortable in silence? Why do you rush to fill every gap in conversation? Why do you fear that if you don't keep talking, the other person will lose interest? Isn't that fear itself proof that you are placing their attention above your own power? The truth is this: silence is not emptiness, it is strength, it is control, it is mystery. When you stay silent, you give the other person room to reveal themselves. You force them to do the work. You make them lean forward, waiting, wondering, craving your next move. Isn't that far more powerful than overexposing yourself through endless chatter? Silence creates tension. And tension is the spark of attraction. Every pause, every glance, every deliberate delay makes her wonder, what is he thinking? Why isn't he rushing? Why is he so calm when everyone else is desperate? That question running through her mind is what keeps her invested. That mystery you create is what makes you unforgettable. So let me ask you, do you realize that your greatest weapon might not be your charm, your looks, or even your confidence, but your ability to hold silence? Do you see now that your power grows the moment you stop giving away too much of yourself too quickly? Do you understand that silence, when combined with presence, is what separates rare men from the common ones? Because here's the reality: the man who can sit in silence without fear controls the room. The man who can hold a pause without rushing controls the frame. And the man who can say less while making others feel more, that man doesn't just attract, he captivates. The silent power of being hard to predict. Have you ever noticed that the people who capture your attention the most are the ones you can never quite figure out? Think about it. When someone is too easy to read, too available, too predictable, doesn't your interest fade over time? But when someone keeps you guessing, when their energy feels a little mysterious, when their next move isn't obvious, don't you feel yourself pulled in, curious, even a little hooked? Now let's flip that around. How predictable are you in the eyes of women? Do you text at the same time every day? Do you say yes to every plan she makes? Do you always make yourself available, no matter how last minute her request? Do you fall into patterns that make her feel like she already knows exactly what you'll do before you even do it? Here's the problem. Predictability kills curiosity, and curiosity is the fuel of attraction. If she feels like she can read you like an open book, there's no tension, no mystery, no spark. But when she can't quite pin you down, when she wonders what you're thinking, when she doesn't always know how you'll respond, when she feels like there are still layers of you she hasn't unlocked, suddenly you become the puzzle she wants to solve. Ask yourself, are you creating space for her to wonder about you, or are you feeding her all the answers before she even asks the questions? Do you keep her mind busy when you're not around, or do you make yourself so predictable that she doesn't even need to think about you? Do you ever leave her with cliffhangers, or do you always wrap everything up neatly, killing the suspense? Think about the movies and stories we can't stop watching, the ones that keep us glued. What do they all have in common? Uncertainty, suspense, questions left unanswered. Every scene makes you wonder what comes next. That same principle applies to attraction. When you are too easy to decode, she stops wondering. When she stops wondering, she stops chasing. But when you introduce even small doses of unpredictability, when you say no sometimes, when you take longer to reply, when you pursue your plans without always explaining everything, you plant questions in her mind. And here's the beauty of it. Women are wired to crave answers to emotional questions. If she doesn't fully understand you, she'll keep thinking about you. If she doesn't always know what you're feeling, she'll lean in to figure it out. If she can't predict your every move, she'll be drawn closer, simply because her mind can't stand the gap of not knowing. So let me ask you this. Are you living as a man of mystery, a man with layers she wants to explore? Or have you allowed yourself to become so predictable that she already knows your entire script? Are you giving her something to think about when you're not around? Or are you handing her all the answers so she can move on to the next challenge? Are you making her chase the unknown within you, or are you making yourself too easy to win? Because the truth is, the less predictable you are, the more magnetic you become. Have you ever noticed how the most powerful men in history, the ones women admired and longed for, weren't the ones begging for attention, but the ones who made others chase their presence? It's almost like they carried a silent game that nobody could see, but everybody could feel. And here's the real twist. Women could sense it too. They could sense when a man didn't need them to feel important. They could sense when his life didn't revolve around their approval. And that very detachment created an irresistible pull. But let's step back for a second. Why do so many men today fail in this silent game? Why do they end up giving away all their power without even realizing it? And most importantly, why do women lose interest the moment they sense a man is too available, too predictable, or too eager? These are the hidden problems that most men never stop to think about. What happens when you text her back the very second she messages you? Do you think she feels excitement, or does she already know she has you wrapped around her finger? What happens when you rearrange your entire schedule just to fit into hers? Do you believe she sees you as valuable, or as a man who has no mission of his own? What happens when you show up every single time with no mystery, no space, no distance? Does her curiosity grow, or does it die in predictability? What happens when your emotions spill out too easily? When she knows exactly how you'll react, exactly what you'll say, exactly what you'll feel? Does that create attraction, or does it kill the spark? And most of all, what happens when she realizes you are not a challenge anymore, but a man already conquered? Does she keep investing, or does she begin to withdraw? Here's the truth. Attraction is not built in comfort, it's built in tension. It's not the ease of always being available that makes her crave you. It's the unpredictability of not knowing when you'll give her your time. It's not the endless stream of attention that makes her respect you. It's the restraint of a man who chooses where to invest his energy. A man who controls his time, his emotions, and his availability communicates something most men never do. My world does not revolve around you. You're invited into it, but you don't control it. That is power, that is presence, that is scarcity. Women don't lose interest because you're not good enough. They lose interest because you give yourself too easily, too fully, too quickly. You remove the very element that keeps them intrigued, the feeling that they must earn your attention, your affection, and your time. So the real problem is not that women are too hard to please. The real problem is that most men refuse to step into their role as the scarce, grounded, emotionally controlled leader of their own life. Now here's the question that should stick in your mind. What if the secret isn't about chasing women harder, but about controlling the game without ever showing your hand? What if the way to make her crave you isn't through more effort, but through less? The silent weight of over-investing in a woman. Have you ever noticed how some men pour so much into a woman, time, energy, emotions, money, only to feel empty in return? Why is it that the more they give, the less valued they become? Why do women pull back when men start giving them everything without limits? And most importantly, why does this over-investing create weakness instead of building attraction? Let's pause and sit with these questions for a moment. Why do men feel that giving more of themselves will guarantee her loyalty, when in reality it often pushes her further away? Why does a man start to feel drained, unappreciated, and even resentful after giving endlessly without boundaries? Why do women seem to respect men less when they receive everything too easily? And why do so many men ignore these signs until it's too late, when the woman has already lost interest or moved on? These aren't small problems. These are the hidden traps that slowly erode a man's power, his dignity, and his ability to be seen as rare and valuable. Here's the truth. Over-investing is the silent killer of attraction. When you give too much, too fast, without making her earn your attention, your presence, or your commitment, you communicate something dangerous, that your value is low. You may not say it out loud, but your actions scream it. Every time you cancel your plans just to be available for her, every time you ignore your priorities to cater to her needs, every time you hand over your energy without limit, you show her that she is your center and that you are orbiting around her. But here's the deeper problem. Women don't respect men who orbit them. They respect men who lead themselves first. They respect men who give, but with discipline. They respect men who can offer value, but without losing their backbone in the process. Think about this. What happens when you invest in a stock that never grows? Eventually you realize your energy and resources are being wasted. You pull out. Yet, in relationships, men often keep investing in a woman who shows no return, hoping that one more nice gesture will change everything. But instead of growing attraction, it creates imbalance. She doesn't feel inspired to give back, because you've already given her the world without her earning it. Now let's flip the question. What happens when a man gives, but with boundaries? What happens when he invests in her, but also invests heavily in himself, his purpose, his fitness, his goals, his friendships, his inner growth? Suddenly, his giving has weight. His time becomes valuable. His attention feels like a rare gift, not a common handout. And women feel that difference deeply. So the real problem isn't just that men give too much. The real problem is that they give without balance, without limits, and without ensuring that their own self-respect stays intact. Ask yourself this: are you giving because it's who you are, or because you fear losing her? Are you investing from a place of strength, or from a place of insecurity? Are you offering value that she earns, or are you handing it out hoping she'll never leave? These are heavy questions, but they separate the men who keep chasing approval from the men who command respect naturally. The man who gives wisely, sparingly, and with balance remains a mystery. His presence is still a gift, not a guarantee. His attention must be cherished, because it's not given freely to everyone, and that is what keeps him rare. Have you ever noticed how the world always tells men to do more, give more, prove more? From childhood, society drills this message into you. Show effort, show sacrifice, and maybe you'll be worthy. But here's the shocking truth. This endless giving, this endless chasing, this constant need to prove yourself is the very thing that strips you of power, the very thing that makes you common. And in a world where common men are ignored, dismissed, and overlooked, you cannot afford to live like that. So let me give you the blunt reality. Women don't fall for men who do everything for them. They fall for men who know how to do less, but do it with power. They fall for men who live from strength, not from need. They fall for men who operate like the mountain, unmoved, steady, unshaken, while everyone else scrambles for validation. Now think about it. Haven't you seen how most men bend their identity around what a woman wants? They change how they talk, they change how they dress, they even change what they believe just to get her approval. And what happens? She respects him less. She gives him less attention. She loses attraction. Why? Because he has given up his spine. He has given away his core. And this is the problem most men never solve. They think attraction is about effort, about always doing more. But attraction doesn't live in effort. It lives in essence. Ask yourself, what is more valuable? The man who bends like grass to the wind, or the man who stands like stone in a storm? Which man do people respect? Which man do women admire? Which man do rivals fear? The answer is obvious. Strength is not in the chase, it's in the stance. Here's the conclusion that changes everything. The solution has already been laid before you. The answer is not in adding more tricks, more lines, or more game. It's in subtracting the weakness. It's in removing the desperate patterns. It's in stripping away the chase, the constant proving, and the need to be seen. When you detach, you win. When you master absence, you gain power. When you hold your frame, you become rare. When you walk in your own purpose, you stand above the noise. And when you show the world without words that you do not need anyone, that is when people start to need you. That is the secret power you've been searching for. The strategy has already been given to you. And if you live it, if you truly breathe it, you will never have to beg for love, validation, or attention again. Instead, love will come to you, respect will come to you, desire will chase you, because the man who does not chase becomes the man who is always chased.